We are live.
Okay, thank you. This is Senate Judiciary, April 28th, 2023, and we are taking up the confirmation of Robert Cadams to be a Superior Court judge. And Mr. Cadams is here, and I would welcome some opening remarks.
Good morning. Thanks for inviting me.
Sorry, I just would like to hear a little bit about yourself, your background, and most importantly, why you agreed to become a judge.
Thank you. I'd be happy to. I'm a Vermonter since 1979. I moved here to go to UVM from New Jersey. I moved up and I never left. I've been here since then. I went to UVM and to Vermont Law School, and then began practicing first at the State's Attorneys and Sheriff's Department in Montpelier, then with Charlie Martin and Bob Paolini in Barrie, and then 31 years ago, started working at Hoff Curtis in Burlington. That's my legal career. Dave Curtis hired me back in 1992, and I've been there since. I live in Heinsberg with my wife, Emily, and my 4 children, oldest 11, youngest 4. I have practiced primarily criminal defense and family court, family divorce, parentage cases over my career, but I've also handled, civil cases and other type cases along the way. I started applying probably about 6 years ago or so, because I thought that I could contribute as a judge in a way that I haven't as an attorney. I thought I had the experience, the knowledge, the temperament to be a judge. I've had the pleasure of appearing before dozens and dozens of excellent judges over the years. I've gotten to know a few quite well. I've spoken with them about the job, about what it takes, what it would entail, and I thought I could do the job well. I would not have applied if I didn't think I could do it. I think that being a judge is a tremendously important endeavor. You're dealing with people usually in moments of crisis, and their experience in court is usually maybe their one and only time that they're going to be in court, and it's really important, I believe, that the attorneys and the judge, of course, treat people with respect and dignity and fairness. So I think I can do that. I wouldn't have applied if I didn't, and I'm honored that the governor has chosen me.
Senator Sears, you're muted.
For reminding me, unfortunately, I have tested positive for COVID, although I'm feeling pretty good. So I'm remote today and not in person, as you are remote. You have an extensive background in criminal law, but I found one particular case interesting that maybe you could expand on a little bit, and that was representing a mother charged with sexually assaulting her own daughter. It's in your biography or resume, and I wonder if you could, it must have been a very difficult and time-consuming case. But
I'm sorry. Go ahead, Senator.
Please go ahead and
yeah, that was a particularly time-consuming case. It actually spanned, I think, over 6 years. So it was a good chunk of my life dealing with that case. It ended up being 3 separate trials, separated by a year or 2 in between the trials. Many of the witnesses lived in California. There were some in England, some in Vermont. There were expert witnesses in Rhode Island. It was really a monster of a case that was quite complicated and required a tremendous amount of work. The first trial ended in a conviction for my client. I mean, a hung jury. I'm sorry. The first trial ended in a hung jury. Then we were going to try the case again. It ended in a conviction for my client. And then after that conviction, I thought there was some real error in the trial. I thought the judge had made a mistake and allowed certain testimony that should not have been allowed. And it was very important testimony. It was testimony from a psychologist, basically saying that he believed the child was telling the truth, which is not allowed. It's strictly forbidden in Vermont to have that type of evidence in a criminal trial. It's up to the jury, up to the fact finder to decide who's telling the truth or not for any witness. And the judge had allowed it in over my objection. And so I filed motions after trial to ask the judge to set aside the verdict, which is very rare. Not something that judges do lightly, and especially in a case where a child has testified, which everybody is very sensitive to. But he granted the motion. He agreed that he had made an error and needed to undo the jury's verdict, which I've only had that done once in my career, and that was the time.
Well, you said that my work on this case has informed my work on every case since, and I found that to be impressive. So.
Yeah, it really has, because it really showed me that really digging in to the nuts and bolts of every case is really important. And that's where, on its face, it seemed like a somewhat simple case. But when the complexities of the case came forward, it wasn't. And it was anything but. It was a very complicated case.
Unfortunately, in our system of justice, it appears that the time that you need to dig into every case is often not provided because of the backlog and the number of cases in front of judges. And I wonder how you will respond to that.
That is true. There is a culling that needs to go on where you do have to separate from my perspective as a litigant, the cases that need a serious attention and the ones that are not so complex or can resolve quickly. I think the same has to be done by judges as they're looking at the number of cases that are in front of them. They have to try to pay particular attention to the ones that really need the attention. And I've seen that done effectively by judges. I think I could try to emulate that. I've seen that done not so effectively by judges, and I would hope to avoid that type of behavior.
Thank you very much. Where will you be located?
I don't know. You could ask, is Judge Zone is there? He could probably answer that question better than me, but somewhere in, it is somewhere within, an hour of Burlington. So that would be, Chittenden, Franklin, Lamoille, Addison, somewhere up this neck of the woods.
The north. Okay. I'm down south in Bennington County where we have openings, I think. Judge Zone, did you want to comment on that?
You're both correct.
Oh, good.
Yes, we actually, the governor does still have two openings. One is the Northeast Kingdom, as well as a slot for Bennington and Rutland. And once those appointments will be shifting them. And for Mr. Kadams, there will be the idea right now when things are coming to fruition, looks like it's going to be in that area of Chittenden, Addison, Franklin initially, and to put some things together.
Thank you. Other questions for Judge Kadams?
Just a curiosity question. I appreciate your application and thank you for the in-depth information. I was just curious, for question 45, you mentioned that one of the personal experiences that influences your ability to serve as a successful judge, of the four, one of them was working in bars and restaurants back when you were in college. And I was just wondering if you could expand on that just a little bit.
Yeah, the governor had the same question. So it's a question invoking answer, I guess. I didn't really expound on it maybe as well as I should have in my answer. I think it brought me out of the university, kind of into Burlington, and to meet the folks of Burlington. I learned who lived here. I worked for them. I served them. Either and I started washing dishes in a restaurant in Burlington, and I think that really it kind of took me out of the comfort zone of just being a student and being up there and spending all my time doing that. I would be in school, and then I would go work mostly on the weekends when I was in college. But then I spent 2 years after college, before I went to law school, where I was mainly managing and bartending in the Burlington area. And I think that also it showed me how businesses work. I ended up managing restaurants, so it showed me how to manage people, how to set schedules, how to do things that had to do with kind of the business end of things, which, then I went off to law school, and I continued to work part-time, but, you don't get a whole lot of business training in law school. So I think it was really important for me. And then come, 25 years later, I'm running, or 20 years later, I've become the managing partner at Hoff Curtis, and I'm running a business again. And then when I became the sole owner of Hoff Curtis, I was, running that business for the last 3 years. So I think it really, and it helped me understand my clients who were coming in, many of them who, didn't have higher educations, but worked their whole lives. And I could have some connection to that. So it really did inform who I am, and I think will inform me as a judge as well.
Thank you.
Other
governor,
questions?
The governor, by the way, said his work in restaurants and bars informed him to be a governor as well. So,
Well, I worked in restaurants and bars when I was at UVM, so a decade before you, but it did make a difference. But I won't go much further than that discussion. Senator Bohowski.
Thank you. I'm wondering if you could tell me a little bit about your views on the restorative justice process and utilizing that as a tool.
No, I think it's critically important. I've been involved in many cases in which we've used the restorative justice model, and there's sometimes there's some of the hardest cases. For example, I've had a number of DUI fatality cases in which, there were two best friends in the car, and one's driving and one's the passenger, and, one dies. And, you've got two families there that have known each other forever. And it's, there's nothing but anger. And then through the restorative justice process, I've seen these folks come to some sense of peace, and it's very powerful, and nothing that could be done through the criminal justice process, which is almost set up more adversarial and not restorative. So I've seen it in work. I think it's really important, and I think that the folks, the litigators who have used the process, I think everybody's benefited from it. So I would certainly try to encourage folks to do that as a judge.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
Any other questions for Mr. Kadams? Are you a judge yet? I'm referring to you both.
No, not yet. So I think my understanding is when the Senate's in session, if there's an appointment, I go through the confirmation process first and then sworn in
That's
after that.
correct.
So
Okay. Other questions for Bob? Thank you very much for joining us and wish you all the best.
well, thank you, Senator.
We'll be voting. We're going to have public comment next Wednesday, I believe. And if there is any, and then we will vote after that discussion. And then assuming that it's a positive vote in this committee, it would move to the Senate floor. I think it's 5 days. So hopefully before we adjourn, we can finish the process.
Thank you, Senator.
Thank you. Mr. Dixon Corbett is our next applicant. So thank you for joining us this morning, and maybe you could give us a little bit of your background and why you would like to be a judge.
Yes, thank you. I live in East Thetford with my family, my wife Megan, my daughter Plover, my son Ira. I grew up outside of Philadelphia and moved to Vermont 20 years ago and went to law school. And I was really lucky to have a chance to go to law school. And I decided a long time ago that the way to express my gratitude for that opportunity was to be a public servant and try to do the best that I could by way of my neighbors. And I think a lot of people feel that way. A lot of people do that with their careers, and some of them are really excellent at inspiring people and organizing, and they become politicians and community organizers, and they do wonderful work. That's not my strong suit, but people do really wonderful things that way. There's people who are great at advocating for causes, and they bring light to the important issues of the day. That's also not my strength, but people do really wonderful work that way. There's people who are great in the courtroom, and I'm okay there. I'm fine in the room. But if there was a case that was really important to you that you win, there's a number of people I would recommend other than me. But what I'm really good at, what my real strengths are knowing the law and procedure that apply in situations and facilitating really difficult conversations. Show me a room where there's people who have had a problem, a dispute between them and are upset, and I'll go in there and be a part of that conversation. The roles that I've had as a professional have all used those skills somewhat. I've been a staff attorney with the Vermont Judiciary. I've been a deputy state's attorney and a state's attorney in Orange County. I've been a town moderator in the town of Chelsea. All of those roles use those skills somewhat, but where they really come together for me is in the role of judge. It's where I think that I can use my skills the best. It's where I think that I can be the best public servant that I can be.
Thank you. An obvious question is all of your experience appears to be in the criminal realm. And as a Superior Court judge, you're going to be asked to deal with the civil matters as well. How will you prepare yourself to deal with those civil matters?
So the first 5.5 years of my career were as a staff attorney with the Vermont Judiciary, and that was across all the different divisions of the judiciary. So I worked then in criminal somewhat, but extensively in civil and also in family. I've gone back over my notes from that part of my career, and I prepared or drafted over 600 judicial opinions during that time, over 400 of which had to do with civil. I've researched and wrote about and thought about all aspects of the civil division: landlord-tenant law, foreclosures, contract disputes, torts, property. And I still have all the notes from then. I've kept them all, and I've been reviewing them, reacquainting myself with them. Of course, it's been a decade since I used those skills, but that is an important part of my career. I spent fully a third of my career doing that kind of work, and I look forward to the opportunity get back to it.
Great. I think we've heard from a few people who want to testify regarding some cases that you were involved in and their concern about you. So we will hear from them next week. But I just want to prepare you for that, and you will be given an opportunity to respond next week if you want to.
Okay.
But I don't know what they're going to say, so it'd be kind of premature to try to do that. In the criminal realm, and I don't know in Orange County if it's as true as in other counties, but we've seen a tremendous backlog, partly due to the pandemic. And I'm sure as state's attorney, you've had to make some tough decisions. Maybe you can describe how you're dealing with that backlog in Orange County.
Sure. There's way more work than you can do. So every decision you make is at the expense of working on another case. And the decisions that you make about how you spend your time are the way that you express your values and your priorities about what's important to you. What's important to me are the really important cases, the cases where people have been badly hurt, the cases where victims have suffered extraordinary loss. They deserve time. They deserve attention. They deserve to be heard. They deserve to be listened to. In order to make the time for that, you have to be really efficient about the other cases and understand what outcomes are appropriate for those cases and understand what the tools are in the system that are appropriate for that. We are really lucky in Orange County to have a wonderful restorative justice community. We have really excellent professionals doing that kind of work. They are doing great work and they're a wonderful resource. A lot of our cases go there and they're doing helping victims find peace. They're helping people make amends for what happened and bringing them in is an important part of resolving cases. Other tools are available too, but knowing which tools fit the right case at the right time, using those efficiencies in a way that allows you to spend your time on what matters to you.
Thank you. Are there other questions from the committee for Mr. Dixon Corbett?
Senator Sears, I do just have a question. Mr. Corbett, thank you for the application and thank you for being here today to share about your experiences. I was just looking at question 46, which states, please describe your experiences working with diverse populations. And you talk about family law a bit, and I was just wondering if you could also expand into the criminal law realm as to your thoughts on working with diverse populations as it relates to criminal law.
Yeah, I think that one of the ways that bias can become part of decision-making most often in the criminal law is when kind of the idea arises that someone's a bad person who needs to be prosecuted or arrested or convicted. And that conclusion, that can really be informed by assumptions and impressions that contain the very sorts of biases and prejudices that we don't want to be part of our decision making. And I ultimately can only control myself. And so when that issue arises, the way that I deal with it is by making sure that the governmental decisions that are being made are always supported by sufficient evidence. And sometimes they are, and sometimes so, an issue is presented to me and I can sign the information or I can sign the juvenile petition. But sometimes you can look at what the real evidence is that would be admissible in court and think that it's it's not sufficient. Maybe there is a misunderstanding about culture. Maybe there's a misunderstanding about a misapprehension of what neurodiversity means and how that looks. Maybe there's a misunderstanding of mental health and how that can affect a person's decision-making and choices and what that looks like. So as a prosecutor, it's easy to look at decisions that are made by what's been filed in court. But the full scope of my work isn't just that, it's also the decisions that were made not to file a case, the decisions that were made not to seek removal of a child. It's the children who weren't removed from their home at 10 o'clock on a Friday, for example, because the evidence wasn't sufficient to support that governmental action. These are, they can come in any case, they can come at any time. And being really careful about what is the evidence that supports the governmental decision is a really important way for me to be mindful of not letting cultural biases become part of governmental decision-making, socioeconomic biases, racial, mental health, neurodiversity, cognitive diversity, all of those issues. Sufficiency of the evidence is really key for that.
Thank you.
Other questions? Thank you very much. Oh, where are you going to be serving? I'm sorry, Sahowski.
No worries. It's the hybrid meeting is hard. I'm going to ask you the same question and just ask you to talk about the way you engage with restorative justice.
There, as I mentioned, we have wonderful professionals in Orange County. I don't view them as being separate from the criminal justice system or the work that I did as state's attorney. I view them as integral to it. I view the restorative justice practices and the personnel and the resources as being part of the primary decision in what sort of outcome makes sense. The role of a state's attorney is really a problem-solving role. A specific kind of problem comes, and the role of the state's attorney is to come up with what sort of outcome looks like a solution to that problem and what tools are needed. The restorative aspect is integral in almost every case to finding a solution that restores victim sense of trust in the community, can address victim sense of loss and grief. Making amends, the apology itself is often one of the most critical aspects of making right what's been done wrong.
Thank you.
Other questions? Where are you going to be serving if you're confirmed?
My understanding is primarily in Windsor and Orange counties.
Okay. Well, other questions for Mr. Corbett? Thank you so much for joining us this morning. We appreciate it. Our next person who has been, I guess it's a reappointment to the Human Rights Commission. And I don't think he's a stranger to this committee or anyone on this committee, Representative Kevin Coach Christie. So Coach, welcome to Senate Judiciary, and I appreciate your being here this morning. I know you have a busy schedule, so.
Good morning, Mr. Chair.
And given your busy schedule and all the other boards and commissions you're on, how can you possibly do this?
Well, as you know, Senator, it's what we do, and you know, the challenge sometimes is more, you know, around you know, being frustrated sometimes with the lack of progress in some of our work, you know, versus the work itself. And I think that and that is the key, you know, to all of this. is just trying to maintain direction. You know, I like to use the quote from Congressman John Lewis, and when I need a little extra lift, he said, little by little, day by day, what's meant for you will find its way. And I've found that to kind of work out that way. So I guess that's my answer to your question. So
I'm always impressed by the workload that you carry and the number of commissions, committees, and you're still active in your local community on boards and commissions. So I really appreciate your work, and I've also appreciate you as a colleague over the years. I wanted to express that.
Well, thank you so much, Senator. And everybody on the committee. I mean, that's what makes Vermont special, you know, and I think, you know, us working together, you know, will continue to make it even better, you know, and I guess that's sometimes the ride up this morning was amazing, you know. I mean, think of how many times we've all made that trip up 89, and it never ceases to amaze you how beautiful it is, you know, and you just say, okay, that's why I'm here. That's what this work's all about. So
Yeah. I have to say my ride's a little different than yours, but I get to see all of Vermont, except Chittenden County, I think.
Right. Well, that's
Senator Sears, anytime you want to come visit in Chittenden County, I'd be happy to show you around.
Well, that would be helpful because I think I'd get lost there, even though I lived there and went to UVM. I think it's changed a great deal.
It's nice visiting other states.
Questions for Coach?
Senator Vohosky has a question.
Hi, Coach. Thanks for being here. I am curious to know kind of what your hopes are for if you're reappointed to the Human Rights Commission, what you hope to do on that commission.
Well, we've been working the last 3 bienniums actually to try to grow the capacity of the commission itself to help protect and support more Vermonters in all facets of protected classes, housing, public accommodation, education, and we're growing, you know, as a state. And that being said, having a entity such as the commission to support that growth is critical. And so I will continue to work with the commission and our colleagues here, both in the House and the Senate, to help to grow that, because it does provide accountability for all sorts, you know, of inclusion, diversity, and equity for Vermonters.
Awesome, thank you. And my follow-up is, in your time already on the commission, is there something you're particularly proud of?
Well, one of the coolest things, and this might seem like a micro piece of information, but we were able to do a couple of cool things. One was to add a director of education and outreach, but even more positive was we converted our investigators from just general investigators to attorney investigators. And what that did was it just gave us a more voracious and strong investigative report for the commissioners to review and for cases that came before the commission. Our average case size, just in general in pages, ranges anywhere from 35 pages to 45 on average. And every once in a while, you get that case that's over 60 pages long. And what that says is how in-depth the work is of those investigators. So that I would say would probably be some of the strongest.
Wonderful, thank you. I've got nothing else.
I just got a quick question, Senator Sears.
Senator Norris.
How you doing?
Hello, Senator. How you doing? We went from one judiciary committee to the other.
There you have it. There you have it. I just didn't want you to think I was ignoring you after having served with you for a couple of years. But having said that, I enjoyed our many conversations, and I agree with Senator Sears. I don't know how you keep doing it, all these committees and boards and whatever you serve on, but I guess you're the right man for the job. But my question is, out of all the boards and some you serve on, in reference to this board here, what do you consider has been your biggest success to this point?
Well, I guess, continuing to, like I said earlier, grow the commission itself. Right now we have the opportunity collectively as the two bodies to bring forward a litigator position, in the commission. And what's happened in the past is that our executive director, who is also an attorney, not only had the responsibility for operating the commission and managing the commission, they would also be tasked to do litigation on behalf of some of the cases. And so it actually limited that ability in some cases. We'd have to either subcontract or try to find another way to support, let's say, a charging party in those actions, because there's only so many hours in the day. So hopefully, my hope is that if we can, get through this next phase, that there again will enhance the capability of the commission. And that's something that we've been working on collectively, both judiciary committees.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions for Coach? Representative Christie, thanks for being with us, and thank you for all you do.
Well, thank you guys. I hate to use the cliches, but teamwork does make the dream work. And everyone have a great weekend, because it looks like
You too, Coach.
Thank you so much.
Like rain in my forecast.
Well, I'm hoping we don't get washed out again.
All right,
again.
thank you. We're going to take a 3 minute. Well, I just want to take a 3-minute break. You don't have to go off.
I didn't think we were taking this bill up.
Well,
Here we are.
yeah,
Well, we're taking it up, but I don't know what we'll do with it, if we have even time to get through it.
I guess I was looking at your response to the representative, and then all of a sudden it's on the agenda here. I'm going, oh, I didn't think we were taking it